All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I know with the Minnesota Rural Health Conference, I know that's a conflict for some of you, and we're really glad that you have joined us today. And today we are on our last session of our LOA content. So Candy Hansen from Stratus Health is going to be helping us out with the topic for today. And Kim, you can go on the next slide. We do have a check-in per usual. I know we have a small group, but if we can just go around the horn again and share your name, your role, your organization, where you're located. And then the interesting fun question today is, if you could instantly become an expert in something, what would it be? And it's kind of a hard question. I don't even know if I have my answer yet. I've got a few ideas. Well,
Carrie, I'd be happy to start because I just thought of what I'd like to be an expert at.
Perfect. Candy, go ahead, take it away.
Hi, everybody. Glad to be with you for this last session. I'm Candy Hansen, and I'm a nurse by background. I am a program manager for Stratus Health across a variety of quality improvement projects. I've been involved with LOA for many years now and have had a lot of fun with it. And so my one thing that I would be an expert at would be golf. Because I'm not.
Good answer. Good answer. Kim, do you want to go next?
Sure. Kim McCoy, Senior Program Manager at Stratus Health, based in Bloomington. And the first thing that came to mind for me was gardening, because I'm spending a lot of time on that right now. And I know a few things, but mostly by trial and error, not really because I know what I'm doing. So I'd love to actually have the expertise.
Yeah, that's a really good answer too. We've been experimenting for the last few years at my grandparents' property. And man, yeah, I could use some of that expertise myself. I will go next. I am Carrie Howard. I am a program manager at Stratus Health and located here in lovely Bemidji, Minnesota. And I think, and maybe this is just like recency bias, but last night my sister and I were working on a baby quilt for a new, I guess she's not really a niece, cousin niece. I don't know what you call that. A new baby. And it would be really nice if I actually knew how to sew well when I'm working on those kinds of things. Because I'm certainly an amateur, as many of these baby quilts as I've made in my lifetime. They are always a bit wonky. I like to describe that as made with love. Because they are always a little odd. All right, I think we will go to Christy. You're next on my screen.
My name is Christy Inger. I am the lead RN care coordinator for Olivia Hospital and Clinic here in Olivia, Minnesota. If I could instantly become an expert, it would probably be in kind of sustainable farming for us for at home. We already kind of dabble in that a little bit, but I feel like I'm constantly doing research. So if I could just know how to do everything, that would be nice.
Yeah, good answer. Rachel, you are next on my screen.
Good morning. This is Rachel Gisha from Lakeview Hospital and Clinic in Two Harbors, Minnesota. I'm the Employee and Community Wellness Coordinator. And I would love to be able to understand cars and engines. I'm not interested in that, but neither is my husband. And I'd like to just be able to do it all and get stuff done when I needed to without having to hire somebody.
Man, yeah, all of these. I feel like as people are listing, I'm like, yeah, that's a good one. I want that one too. That's yeah, would be super helpful. Holly, you are next on my list.
Yes, hello. So I am Holly. I'm from Swift County Benson Health Services, one of the RN care coordinators at the clinic here. I think something that I would like to do well is cook well and efficiently. Efficient being the good word. I don't have a lot of time. I don't enjoy cooking. So I wish I could do that really well and efficient.
Yeah, good answer. And last but not least, we have Ellie.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. So I'm Ellie Morin. I'm the acting quality manager at Cass Lake IHS. I guess what instantly came to my mind was mind reading, but to be realistic, I would love to be a nutrition expert so that not only I know kind of what to eat, but like what the calories and the nutritional value of everything that I put in my mouth is.
Yeah, wouldn't
Yeah,
that
mind reading would be a little scary, I think.
yeah, it could be, yeah.
That's why I thought I better pick something else, even though that came to my mind instantly.
Yeah. So these are all really good answers. And again, I think super fun to kind of think about, like, what is that thing that I wish I could do better? And hopefully, as we get into the content today, you're going to kind of see that connection of why we asked that question, and what we're going to be talking about in just a bit. Before
None of us picked anything work related.
that is really interesting. Yeah, it was all like personal kinds of life skills that I think either just says we're all super good at our jobs and we don't need to learn anything more, or we're just all summertime thinking about our gardens and our lives a little bit more than the daily grind. All right. And it looks like Sherry just joined us. So welcome, Sherry. If you don't mind, we're going to put you on the spot. Kim, can you go back one slide? We were just finishing up our check-in, and our check-in today is to just share your name, your role, where you're at, and then if you could instantly become an expert in something, what would it be?
Oh, wow. Well, my first thing comes to mind is weight loss.
Yeah, right?
I could have a miracle cure for everyone. I would love to think that would be. And maybe just positive energy, trying to always keep people up. I don't know. But yeah, we'll go with weight loss. That sounds even easier than people's moods.
Carrie, if you could master those two things, I think you'd be like a gazillionaire.
Yeah, I think I would. I'm getting close to retirement though, so I don't have much time.
Yeah, and can you just quickly share again your role and where you are?
Okay, so I'm in Wheaton. I'm at the Wheaton Medical Center, Sanford Medical Center. I work in the clinic side as the clinic supervisor and the RN care manager. And that's it, I guess.
All right, great, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so let's just spend a little bit of time talking about the session from last month. So last month, we learned about strategizing collectively. We talked about a few different tools or processes for prioritizing and decision making. And I just wanted to check in with everybody to see if you have any further thoughts or if you tried any of the methods or the tools. And I'm just going to be quiet and let you all speak up.
I can report a little bit on that. We here at Lakeview have been so wrapped up in COVID vaccines that we finally, with that slowing down a little bit, have had some time to really work on our population health. Our goal is to join forces with Lake County for it. And the cool thing was we did all our vaccine rollout for our county directly with them. So now we're switching our Friday meeting from the COVID meeting to the population health strategy meeting. And in June, we're going to work with our leadership team to really get our good plan started for that. So it's all very timely. And I think the biggest thing that I worked on was just redesigning our very linear chart into a snowflake pattern and seeing how we've got overlap and things that we can work together on and give us all a visual to sort of lead that. So it's kind of fun to take everything we had just put in a nice straight line pattern and make it all funky and interconnected, like the snowflake example.
Hey, this is Candy. Can I just ask a quick question? Did you, when you've gotten together, have you done the story of self yet? Because I think that would be a super powerful motivation for your group.
Yeah, well, our first thing is supposed to be this Friday, so we haven't actually switched over because we had a lot of people on vacation and stuff the last couple of weeks. So I think that would be a great thing for us to kind of kick that off with. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Rachel. That is super exciting. And as you were talking too, we're sort of coming on the other side of COVID and the COVID vaccination and those kinds of things. And I just couldn't help but think this whole LOA content and strategizing collectively and those kinds of things, you guys have been deeply entrenched in this kind of activity for a long time. And even if we talk about population health in general, like all of the planning and all the work that you guys have been doing around the vaccination and coordinating with your county and other partners, that is, really exactly the kind of stuff that we were talking about here. So I really like what you just described as far as the evolution of that group. So now we're kind of moving out of crisis mode and saying, okay, what can we do proactively in our community or for our community? Great. Anyone else? Any other thoughts about either last month's session or any of the previous sessions? Any of the work that you've been doing related to your population health or your community coalitions?
Carrie, something else that just sort of came to mind for me that I don't know if we explicitly talked about last time was, that I think a lot of times, when we bring groups together, and especially if we're kind of like the host or the facilitator, the convener, the person who's bringing the group together, it seems a lot easier for us sometimes to just sort of put things in front of them and say, here's what we're going to work on. Here's the goal that we're going to, but to actually take the time to work collaboratively with the group to set those goals and to develop the plan and identify the strategies will go a long way toward getting buy-in and getting people to really take ownership of the work. And I think especially, the thing about COVID is there's so much urgency to it. It feels like you can't take time to do that. Like you have to keep doing things and you have to do them now. And that's absolutely the right thing to do in this situation. The difference, I think, with this population health work is that while there's some urgency, it's also, a lot of these issues have been around for a long time and they are going to continue to be around, and we can actually take the time to do planning together. And so being a little more patient with it and kind of giving people time to provide input and work together is, I think, really beneficial.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. I think, yeah, you're exactly right that, kind of like what we were just talking about with Rachel, that, okay, now we can slow down and think this through a little bit and apply some of these tools and methods and processes a little bit more intentionally without that urgency of a public health emergency. So yeah, good. Other thoughts?
This is Christy from Olivia. I think, we're kind of in a similar situation with what Rachel was talking about, how we're just kind of coming out of a bunch of COVID things. Our facility also is currently working on changing electronic health record systems and transitioning from what we're currently on to Health Partners, which we joined about a year ago. So we've kind of got that going on in the background. And then I am part of the group that's working on our community health needs assessment. And so I'm kind of trying to tie this in with that. And the group that we're working on, we're actually holding a considerable amount of community discussions, just small groups of community discussions, just to see where they think that we're at and what kinds of things we need for population health in this area and what we're lacking. And so I feel like my head is spinning a little bit. But yeah, some of the strategies that we've talked about with this group has been very helpful. And I think in the future, rolling some of these things out and working even with our internal population health group, they will be very beneficial.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Christy. When you said working on that community health needs assessment, I think that's a really good application for this LOA type content. And actually, Ellie, that's kind of the direction I think that Cass Lake is going as well. We had recently done a community health needs assessment and then COVID hit. So taking those results and moving it into the action planning and actually responding to those results. All right.
Yes, Carrie. We are like Rachel and like Christy. We just folded our incident command team, kind of tucked that away, saying that we're going to move now forward with the executive team meetings, and that's where we're going to start planning to meet for our community health needs assessment. Follow back up because we completed it, but COVID had hit and we couldn't move forward with it because of all of COVID.
Yeah, great. All right. Any last thoughts before we launch into today's content? All right. I've been practicing my Zoom processes and counting to 10 before we move on, just to give people enough time to unmute and share any thoughts. But hearing none, I think we will hand it over then to Candy and we'll let her roll with the facilitating the content for today.
Great. Thanks, Carrie. So as I mentioned before, I have a variety of experience in a variety of healthcare settings, including health information technology. I've been involved with this LOA work for several years and have just really found it fun. And it's just a good process, I think, when you think about community organizing. And so I'm just really happy to be here with you today. So next slide, please. So our objectives are we're going to learn how to design tactics that motivate people to want to come back and do more. And that's really, you know, at the core of community collaborating. And then to develop a coaching practice and a learning culture. And by coaching, I think it's an important distinction. We're not talking about coaching in a punitive sort of way. We'll be talking about coaching in a way that's mutually agreed upon to say, I'm going to feel safe and feel open to coming to you to ask a question when I'm struggling with something, because I don't know why I'm struggling with it, or maybe I do know why I'm struggling with it, but I'd like an objective opinion about that. And so that's an important distinction, I think, when we talk about coaching in general. Next slide. And you've seen this slide before, but you know, the theory of change is people plus power equal change. So who are our people? What challenges are we facing? What's our vision for a different future? Power is what resources do we already have to achieve this vision that we have that we're establishing, and what resources do we need? So Rachel, I think the snowflake will be a really good exercise for you guys to kind of work through that and understand that. And then how will we mobilize and deploy our resources to achieve our vision and really make a change? Those are really at the core of that theory of change. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we're talking about peer-to-peer coaching. So members of QIO team, quality improvement organization teams, coalition leadership teams, teams across a coalition, all can develop a peer-to-peer coaching practice in the course of their work together. You actually also, though, as you probably already know, can do peer-to-peer coaching and enter in a kind of a relationship in which you mutually agree upon doing that, both at a team and an individual leader level. And we're going to do a couple of examples in just a little bit, and we're going to open it up for you to help us practice what that coaching actually looks like and feels like. And really the peer-to-peer coaching, because it's, like I said, it's just you're engaging in a trusted relationship with somebody that you respect their opinion, and it enables others to build their own capacity to act. So if I'm stuck on something and I go to you and say, you know, I'm just not sure why, but I'm stuck here. You know, by your asking me open-ended questions and offering suggestions, you help me, in my mind, put everything back together so I know what I need to do next and what I need to try next. And it offers that challenge and support for one another's learning and growth. Next slide, please. And I know you've talked about norms in this coursework, and coaching is useful whenever working to enable others to build their own capacity to act. So individual leaders and teams, you might agree to coach or co-coach one another as peers, or as an individual, or you may seek one-way coaching support from a more experienced leader that you have respect for. For coaching to work, both the coach and the coachee must agree that they're entering in that coaching relationship. And it doesn't have to be necessarily a formalized relationship as much as it is expectation setting, that I would like to come to you with an issue that I'm having, and I would like to have you help coach me through it so that I can understand what I need to do differently. And as in structuring a team, it's helpful at the outset of the coaching relationship to establish that purpose and agree to expectations around roles and norms of conduct. Excuse me. You know, it doesn't have to be a long list, but as I just mentioned, it's just doing that level setting for expectations. Here's what I'm coming to you with, and here's what I would like help with, and please offer that to me. So So, you know, in coaching, in coalitions, coaching can be useful in supporting leaders to hone their narratives and to motivate others to action, overcome motivational or structural challenges with individuals or teams in the field, develop measurable aims and resourceful tactics that build capacity, and also then to develop those interdependent teams and structures between the teams. Next slide, please. So, as I've said, coaching is about helping a person or a team think through an issue, determine their own approach to address it, and then encouraging and supporting them through the changed action. And coaching uses an appreciative inquiry to enable someone to view the issue from a new perspective. And I think that'll become clearer when we practice this in just a couple of minutes. Telling someone what they should do is not coaching, that's directing. And so this slide just delineates the difference between effective coaching and ineffective coaching. And so just to highlight the ineffective coaching is deciding what the problem is before you listen to someone and observe what you have to observe. It's falsely praising someone on strengths because you're afraid to hurt their feelings. But you're not hurting their feelings and you're not criticizing others for their weaknesses. You're actually asking questions to say, how might you look at this differently? And not telling another person what to do, but just offering suggestions and questions about things that might help them think about things differently. And then challenging or supporting at the expense of the other, of course, we know that's always ineffective. So, and effective coaching, as we've talked about, or as I've talked about, is just really very much about listening and being present to another person's experience with both our heads and our hearts, and really, really listening. And I think that's probably one of the most impactful parts of effective coaching. And then fostering learning through reflection on successes and failures, and certainly guiding to solutions, but you're offering that balance of support and challenge. Next slide, please. So there are basically 5 formal steps in coaching, but they pretty much occur simultaneously. So it's not, it's not necessarily a checklist. So in the first one, you're observing and diagnosing, and or helping them diagnose. And I would also add you're observing, you're listening, and you're diagnosing. You're intervening, you're stepping back and observing what's going on, even if that observation is listening to the person talk to you about what's happened since they've made the intervention or the change. And then debriefing, and then just kind of the ongoing monitoring, if that's the expectation and the relationship that you would like to set up. Next slide. So in observation and listening and diagnosing, there's basically 3 levels of how this occurs: motivational, strategic, and skills-based. So in motivational, is the individual struggling because they're not putting enough effort forth? Now, this can happen for some really valid reasons. I would cite COVID fatigue as a really valid reason, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Are they holding back because they're nervous, or they're not confident, or they're not comfortable? Are they letting those frustrations or those fears kind of get the best of them before, so that they are not feeling like they have the confidence to be successful in their collaboration? When we're talking about strategic, we're talking about, is the individual struggling because the goals are not achievable, or because they're not thinking creatively about how to use the resources they have, or because maybe the overall strategy doesn't make sense and needs to be clarified or adapted to the situation? And skills-based is where an individual struggles because they either haven't mastered a skill yet, or they're lacking the confidence about understanding what their skill set is to execute effectively. Do they have the necessary skills in their repertoire? Is it a matter of coaching them to draw out their skill set when I know that you have a certain skill set because I've worked with you for many years or I'm just starting to work with you, but I've heard about what your skill set is, and just kind of drawing that out. Are they getting interference from other habits and behaviors? For example, is someone well versed in marketing may think that skill is a substitute for authentic storytelling? And then how could you provide this person an opportunity to practice and debrief? And I think we've talked a little bit about that as we've been going through this. Next slide. So number 2 is talking about intervening. So if the diagnosis is that the individual needs to put in more effort, and as I said, COVID fatigue is a great example of, I just can't fathom asking anyone else to do one more thing. We're so tired. I just can't do that. And it becomes sort of a paralysis where you can't, you're letting that, and it's valid. It's very valid, but you've got to get beyond that in order to have enough confidence in your narrative and your story and why you're doing this to be able to understand that it's okay. And if people say no, they're going to say no. Not everybody's going to say yes all the time. And with this, with someone who could benefit from that motivational approach, your tone is safety, empathy, care. Your tactics are encouragement and enthusiasm. Just, you can do this. I know you can do this, and help them understand and confront their fear, embarrassment, or other emotions that might be getting in the way. And model and rewarding courage. Modeling courage and emotional maturity in your own behavior. Confess your fear and how you move towards it rather than away. So for example, you could give an example and say, oh, I remember when I was starting this one project or this one collaboration, and I just felt like I couldn't do it. And here's how I thought it through. Maybe I got coaching from someone else, but here's how I thought it through and was able to get beyond that. And you're lighting a fire, reminding the person why they joined the coalition and how it's tied to your narrative and your story are very, very powerful motivators. So if the individual is in the strategic category and they're not understanding or thinking about a practice appropriately, choose that strategic approach where the tone is listening, understanding, asking questions about how they are thinking about their leadership skill. You might say, why did you choose to do this and not this? Just curious, based on where you are now. How could you take the skill level to the next level? Or what might it look like to have your confidence be lifted in a situation where I have a feeling you already have this skill set, you're just lacking confidence. And then, you're reflecting and saying, let's take a moment to think about what you think is working and what is not working. And let's talk more about that. You're offering assertions about what you're hearing and observing and how a person think about that differently. If the diagnosis is the lack of the ability to execute and you're using a skill-based approach, your tone is practical and constructive. You're modeling the skill and conducting a role play. You're practicing feedback. You're repeating. You're breaking the skill down sometimes into smaller parts and inviting the individual to try one at a time. And then you're offering safe opportunities to practice the skill and fail forward. And then it's repetition, repetition, repetition. So I'm going to stop there for just a second and ask if anyone has any questions about this part of the coaching.
And Candy, maybe I'll just add that, on the slide, this is framed as as in the context of an individual, but this also absolutely can be related to, it can be in the context of a group or a team. So maybe your coalition, kind of overall, the group is just having a hard time staying motivated. You know, everybody has other things they're working on, or maybe they're feeling defeated because they aren't seeing progress as quickly as they want to. But so we're going to talk a little bit about group coaching when we get forward too, but it can be at the group level as well as for each individual.
Yeah, that's a great point, Kim. So and we'll talk that through in just a minute. But yeah, you know, you're working you've set your goals. You're working as a group.
So maybe something for you all to think about too is, if you imagine doing this.
This is the data, and this is what it's looking like, and this is what we set as our goals. Can we take some time and talk about why we might not be meeting our goals? So.
Yeah. I think you might have dropped out for a second, Candy.
Oh, sorry about that.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're good now. So something else maybe for you all to think about is, you know, if you're doing this kind of coaching with a peer, somebody who you work with on a regular basis, how do you think that might feel for you? Like, do you think it would be hard to sort of, if you can see that somebody is struggling maybe with something that they're trying to do as part of your coalition work? Would you be comfortable offering coaching?
Kim, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I think it depends on if they're like your supervisor or somebody that's higher ranked than you.
Yeah.
I feel sometimes that's a little bit more intimidating than a peer-to-peer. Peer-to-peer, I find it much easier to assist and offer guidance than it is to like my boss or just somebody that's above me.
Right. Thanks,
Yeah, that's a great point, and absolutely valid, because if your organization has a hierarchical structure, that makes it more challenging to not have it feel like it's coaching sort of in a different way. So I absolutely get that. That's a good point.
This is Carrie, and one of the things, like originally when I went through all of this LOA content, I would say this coaching piece is probably one of the like most impactful to me personally, just because I tend to be a problem solver. And so when people have questions or they are like, I'm having a problem with XYZ, I immediately go to solutions. And so learning about this and practicing the actual coaching, which, you know, like Candy described, is really about listening and the appreciative inquiry. So just asking questions and letting that person or that group think through it and talk it out themselves. Not that we can't share, you know, our experiences and suggestions and to say, you know, this worked for me before, but just like the piece that hit me the deepest, I guess, is this isn't directing. This isn't, I think maybe the more traditional way we think about coaching, like even if you think about in a sports team or something, the coach is the one that's setting the rules and telling you what to do and how to do it. And this is a little bit different. This is really about helping them come to their own conclusions versus, you know, the coach or telling them what to do or how to think about it.
Yeah, that's a great point, Carrie, because I'm such a problem solver too. I'm like, you know, just tell me what the problem is and I will give you a solution. that's not always particularly helpful, I've found. And I think especially with a peer, I've found that the coaching, the peer-to-peer coaching, I kind of had to practice it. First of all, in order to be more effective at it and not want to jump to a solution. But if you find someone that you can do effective peer-to-peer coaching with, it's just so empowering to have someone help you think through what you might have been missing and then understand and try to find a solution based on that.
Yeah, I actually was thinking about that, Ellie, when you were talking about how it feels a little bit different, you know, if you were coaching somebody in a formal position that might be in the hierarchy above you, that maybe, again, we don't think about it as coaching. We think about it as offering a sounding board to say, hey, if you want to talk through this issue, like I'm here if you want to talk about it. And so we just present it in a little bit different way. And maybe that feels a little safer or less awkward. Because yeah, we don't have to call it coaching necessarily.
Yeah, that's a good point, because just depending on the hierarchy, it's hard to get out of that mindset of what traditional coaching that we think about is. So that's a really good point, Carrie. All right, well, let's move on. So the third step then is stepping back and observing. Again, as we've talked about, avoid the urge to do it for them or offer the solution for them. Allowing an individual to try a different intervention. And if they want you to observe them in action, or maybe you want to practice how you might say something with someone. And, you know, that allows you to practice and get some feedback, immediate feedback before you would actually do it, maybe with your collaborative. And so that's oftentimes a way to look at that. Next slide. And then I think it's important, always important to debrief, you know, what went well, what were you, and this can be a debrief with another person, with a group, or it can be a debrief just by yourself. You know, what did you think went well? What were you challenged by? What was really hard for you? What are some possible solutions? And what are your goals or next steps based on what you heard? And I think sometimes that comes to you very quickly, and sometimes it takes a little bit longer. And next slide. And then if you're in an ongoing, you know, relationship that is peer-to-peer support, you know, how can I think about how can I continue to support this person, and, you know, say, hey, do you want to check back on a regular basis, or do you just want to come back to me if you're still struggling, or how do you want to do that? And then assess whether the intervention was successful at some point down the road. And then, of course, always celebrate your successes. That's super important always. So next slide. So now Carrie and Kim are going to help out with this, and we're going to offer a couple of situations where we'll have them describe a situation that might happen in a coalition. And then we will practice asking questions in the manner in which we've just talked about. And so we encourage everybody to, you know, unmute themselves, and there isn't a right or a wrong answer necessarily. There's things that aren't particularly helpful, as we talked about, but this is practice. And so, you know, to get into some different habits oftentimes does take a little bit of practice. So don't be afraid of saying something that you might not know is perfect or right. So Carrie, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So in this scenario, I have an actual real life example that I think will translate well to you all and your work with coalitions. And like, basically, I just need to talk through some of this and get some new ideas or something, because what I have been doing has not been working. And so the situation is we've got a team from folks from different organizations, and there's a handful of us that lead a couple of smaller work groups. So we've got several different, subgroups or work groups that are working on different topics. And what we've been finding as the work group leads is that we have what we're calling maybe a volunteer issue, or people like actually being willing to step up and take on tasks. So people are really good at showing up to the meeting and participating that way. But when we get to the point of saying, okay, who wants to be responsible for creating this document or reviewing this document or whatever that might be, when we get to the actual tasks, that's when it's just crickets. So there's like 2 or 3 of us, mostly the other subgroup work group leads, that it just seems like we're always the ones that maybe we get uncomfortable with the silence or something, but we're always the ones that are volunteering to take on more and more tasks. And it's starting to become an issue because we've only got so much time in the day. So what I have tried before is, asking for the volunteers, living in that awkward silence until hopefully somebody is willing to step up. We have tried partnering people to see if there's more than one person that's willing to tag team a task. And we have, what else have we tried? I can't even remember, but I just feel like every time, whatever we are trying, it just doesn't seem to be working. And I think maybe some of it is just personalities, where there are some folks that are really uncomfortable speaking up in a group. But I just don't know what to do.
Sure. And so I'll start us out, Carrie. I have 100 thoughts going through my head, but I'll just start us out with 1 or 2. And my first thought is, I have a follow-up question. How long has this group been convening?
In its current state, about 9 months. Our big team has been together for about 9 months. Some of these work groups, they kind of come and go, but yeah, I would say 6 to 9 months generally. So that kind of seems like long enough where we should be feeling comfortable enough, kind of past the awkward intro stage.
Sure. And so my question is, have you set norms and expectations with this group together? And is everyone aware of those?
Yeah, good question. Each of our subgroups, our work groups, we actually do have formal charters that we have created. And so within those charters, we have established, with our smaller group, our smaller teams have established some norms, including, showing up to meetings on time and actively participating and, sharing the workload. So those have been established, but I think the piece that I don't know really how to handle is holding people accountable to those. And maybe it's just a matter of bringing those norms up at the beginning of every meeting to be like, hey, remember you said that we all agreed that we were going to share this workload? Yeah, that might be something we could try.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll be the first to admit the setting the norms, the formalized norms and expectations was probably one of the most uncomfortable pieces to me, because it feels like, you know, we're all professionals and we shouldn't have to establish, to me, what seems like norms that we shouldn't have to do, but they have their place, I think. And you know, it might just be worth going to the group to say, you know, let's review our norms. Let's take a pause. We've been getting together for 9 months, but let's take a pause and review our norms, and then just talk through that and see if anything's changed, or if, you know, we need to do something differently, or can we discuss how we're going to hold each other accountable for these norms, and make that more of a group exercise. That would be sort of my thought about.
So
Yeah.
Carrie, something else maybe to think about is how do you, I'm guessing this problem is really obvious to you because you're one of the people who's always volunteering. Have you thought about sort of how to help others recognize that this is a problem, to see it? Because maybe it isn't as obvious to them.
That is a really good question. And I would say, no, we haven't done a good job of that. As far as talking about it with the full team, or even just that transparency and that discussion. We've talked about it again, like as our smaller group of work group leads and with our project leadership, but that is a really good point that we haven't necessarily talked with the full team to say, you know, we're feeling like this is a problem. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, and I think it's also okay to say, if this is true for you, we're going to talk. I'd like to talk about something today, and I got to be honest, I'm not 100% comfortable talking about this, and so I'm not sure how it's going to go, but I just want you to know, I'd really like, this is important to me, and I would really like to put this out on the table and kind of just be transparent about that, because it is, I personally think it is hard to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And even if I could be more intentional about like our work plan, to be able to say, here's all the tasks and here are the people that have volunteered, so they can like see the data, they can see the list of, oh, hey, my name's not on there anywhere.
I think that's a great idea, Carrie.
Yeah, that is a great idea, for sure. And just, you know, pointing out, this isn't meant to be, you know, this isn't meant to put anybody on the spot. We want to show you the data. This is all about showing you the data so that it's not personal. It's just about the data.
Yeah. All right. Well, cool. Those are some really good ideas.
Does anybody else have any suggestions for Carrie?
Or questions for Carrie? Things you want to
question.
Yeah.
I was just going to comment, you're not the only one who goes through this situation. I think it's super common, at least here. And whether or not this is right, because you're definitely putting people on the spot, but I think it's a little bit of Minnesota or Midwest nice. We're not going to speak up, and it's going to be that awkward silence every time, even if we wanted to really speak up. And so our administrator, I don't think he's on this call, but Greg usually actually, you know, asks somebody personally, like, do you have time, or will you do it, or so-and-so, I want you to take the lead on this. And nobody seems to have a problem with that, and it's really effective.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion, Rachel. And when I do that, I have a tendency to say, you know, Yvonne, I'd like you to take the lead on this and do this. Do you have, and to step it up or to back it up to say, you know, knowing what we're looking to do you have the capacity to do this right now? And so then knowing that, if they're honest with you, then you have a comfort level in knowing, yep, you ask them if they have the capacity, and if they don't, well, then you have to look at a different way to do it, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, Rachel, I
And
think
Greg is really good about connecting people with what he thinks they'd really rise to the challenge for because of a certain skill they display or something like that. So a positive spin.
Yeah, Rachel, I think that's a really good point too, because that's exactly right. Like, I am now learning this team well enough that I know people's strengths and what I think, exactly what you just said, what I think they would be good at and what I feel like they should take on. So I think that's a really good suggestion to just you know, instead of saying, hey, would anyone like to take this on, changing that language to, you know, hey, Allison, I think this would be a really good fit for you. Do you have the capacity, and would you be willing to take this task, or, you know, take the lead on this task?
Yep, that's a great way to approach it, Carrie.
Good. This is super helpful. See, it's just like sometimes, you know, it's just about talking it through that you know, here's the things that I've tried and I'm just stuck and I need some help. So thank you all. Got some good ideas for me moving forward.
Awesome. All right. So Kim, you had an example of a group.
Yeah, so we want to shift gears a little bit and think about how you would coach a team or a group of people who are maybe struggling. And so I'm gonna ask for all of your help in doing this. I'll give an example, but certainly if somebody else has a real life team or coalition that you want to offer up, feel free to do that. The example that I'm thinking of is we've been working in the past, have worked with multiple community coalitions on reducing hospital readmissions. And this, as I'm sure you all know, has been a focus area for CMS and others for a long time. And it's one of those persistent issues that it seems like we're talking about almost constantly. And we've had a few coalitions that, you know, they've been working for literally years on this and just can't quite move the needle. So just are really stagnant and are not seeing progress. And so are, you know, as you can imagine, frustrated that they aren't kind of moving things, seeing improvement, either regularly or at the level that they would like to. And so if you are leading a coalition like this, and maybe you have an example, you know, for a different topic, what are things that, what are the questions that you would ask to kind of help this team both understand what the problem is or the problems are, and how to help them move forward?
Well, Kim, I'll just go ahead and start us out here. One of my questions would be, are you as a coalition plan to study and act PDSAing your interventions on a regular basis so that you're measuring something against something, and if it's not working, you're shifting workflow? That would be one of my first questions.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion, Candy. And so then if you are doing that, what have you learned from those PDSA cycles? What else? What are some other questions that you could ask? Again, so that you're not offering solutions, but helping the group kind of understand what the issues are.
This is Carrie, and I feel like from what you described, Kim, I feel like this might be falling more in like that motivational category where they're just feeling really discouraged about not making progress. So I think what I would ask is more along the lines of something like what could be a quick win for us? Like what could be something that we can just work through, complete, and then take the time to celebrate that, to like bring some of the fun, but also the feeling of like purpose and productivity, where if you're feeling stuck, I think that is sometimes you have to.
Yeah, that's a good point, Carrie. And my follow-up question is, are your goals too lofty? Do they need to be broken down into smaller chunks that are more attainable and at a different speed so that you can get those low-hanging fruit wins and keep the group motivated to do the next thing?
Yeah, good point.
That question, Candy, just triggered another thought that, right now we are looking at this model in that it's one of these three issues that somebody might be struggling with. And what we just talked about in those two examples, I feel like fall in both the motivational category and the strategic category. So when we're talking about like diagnosing what the problems are, it could be one of these things, or it could be all three of these things.
Yeah.
You just have to address each of those components a little bit differently.
And maybe this is a case too, where you go back to some of the basics. I mean, to the motivational point, Carrie, that you just made. I mean, this might be a really great time to bring in a positive story of change. Even though the kind of the coalition might not be seeing great progress at the community level, maybe somebody has a really great story of an individual patient that they've worked with where they have really made a difference and could share that with the group.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, because then you bring back the power of the personal story.
Yeah.
And even though it might not be moving the needle, as it were, it kind of goes back to getting at people's heartstrings and saying, oh, that's right. That's why I'm doing this work.
Yeah.
This is Holly from Suffolk County Benson Health Services. I just kind of want to piggyback on the motivation. Maybe not even asking the questions of what the goals are again, but just purely motivating people to start doing everything again. And, I guess reviewing the goals are part of the motivation as well. But even just those motivating comments like, I believe in you, you can do this, we can do this as a whole, etc.
Thanks, Holly. Yeah, and finding those things that you can celebrate and hold up as accomplishments. Because again, sometimes there's small things that people sort of forget about when they're looking at the big picture. Another thing to think about is, the resources that you have in the coalition. So if you think about kind of what you're trying to accomplish, other questions you can ask are, given what we've laid out as a work plan, or the strategies, the interventions that we've identified, what kind of expertise do we need at the table? Or maybe what's missing that we could, who could we engage that maybe would help us think about this differently, or have more expertise that would help us to kind of implement the work that we're talking about. Does anybody have an example of a group, another group that you've been a part of where things just didn't quite work the way that you were hoping to, or you got kind of stuck?
Okay, I have one that's sort of kind of like Carrie's, that the tasks get divvied, but then they don't get completed and they stay on the action item list like forever.
Yeah. Right. That's hard. And so then how do you, and this is a question for the group, how do you address that in a constructive way? Like, what questions might you ask of that team to help address that situation?
Yeah, Ellie, I was wondering if, like, maybe even going back to what Candy was saying before about the norms, like asking the team, like, okay, we've set, accountability, we've set due dates for this. How are we gonna support people to make sure that they're successful with those, but then also address, those hopefully not common instances where people aren't able to complete the task or complete it by the due date that the group has assigned.
Yeah, and again, if you can bring the data to the team to show specifically what has not gotten done and when the start date was, again, not in a punitive sense, but just in a data-driven sense.
And so sometimes that, maybe sometimes, I mean, just asking the question, what do we need? Like, what's preventing us from making progress on these things? And just asking that out loud to start the conversation can sometimes make a difference. So I think, Ellie, I think you made the point earlier about, or maybe it was Holly, I can't remember, Rachel, about the Minnesota Nice. And, our inclination is to say, oh, I know everybody's busy and it's hard to fit it all in and it's okay, we'll talk about it again next time. Well, if you keep doing that over and over and over, then you don't make progress. So understanding what people need or what the group needs to kind of move things forward. Sometimes you just have to kind of put it on the table.
Yeah, and you can't assume that just because someone gets assigned a task that they really have the capacity to do it.
No.
Sometimes, you're just at the end and you just don't have the capacity, and someone might be afraid to say, I just literally have no capacity right now.
Yeah.
I think you're
This
right,
recently
Candy. Oops, sorry.
Go ahead.
I think you're right,
You can
Candy. I
finish.
think sometimes that's what happens. But just being honest and open about it gets the group moving forward.
Thanks.
I was just going to say, this recently came up in a interdepartmental team that I'm on, and they started out by emailing everyone in the group, like what you said. This was the expectations when you said yes, and this is, we expect this was an attendance issue actually. And then at the next meeting, they had each person state what their barriers were to getting there, either personal ones or in their department, and ideas as to what could make it easier for people to meet the goals of the group.
And that's nice, because if everybody is contributing to everybody's saying what the issues are for themselves, it doesn't make it about one person. I mean, another thing you can do too, is to check in with people ahead of time. So if you know that people, different people are responsible for different things, before you bring it up in the whole group, maybe you check in with people individually to say, how's it going? What do you need? What's getting in your way? And give them a chance to talk about it with you individually before it comes up at the group. Anything else?
Yeah, I hope these practice sessions have been helpful in kind of getting everybody thinking through how how this can be a useful tool for sure.
I like this reflection slide just because taking the time, again, it's super important whether you debrief with the person or the people you're coaching or whether you're doing that reflection on your own. Say, okay, was I jumping to solutions and giving them, 10 recommendations of things they should do, or did I really do a good job of letting that person talk and letting them come to their own conclusion? So I think this piece is super helpful. And I think, like I said, this is probably the hardest component of all of this content for me, because like I said earlier, like my nature is to just say, well, here's an idea, here's an idea, here's an idea. Have you tried this, this, and this? Like, this is going to fix whatever your problems are. And that is really not very helpful to people unless explicitly they say, I've run out of ideas. What have you tried? What has worked in the past? What ideas do you have? That is a little bit different than just jumping to those solutions right away.
All right, well, I'm going to jump off here. So thank you for this opportunity. We appreciate it. Is that okay, Carrie and Kim?
Yeah, Candy, there's a couple more slides where this building a learning practice.
Oh, sorry.
Nope, that's okay.
Are these?
You know what?
Sorry.
In the interest of time, no, it's okay. We'll just go to next steps. Okay. So my guess is that a lot of you've done coaching before in different ways. And so hopefully this will help you just be a little more intentional and thoughtful about how you do coaching. And also just, seeing yourself as a coach, because all of you, I mean, whether it's, somebody you work with, maybe somebody who reports to you, or a team or a group that you're on. I mean, you can use this in so many different ways, and it doesn't have to be obvious that you're coaching people. If you think about just the different ways to ask questions and help the group kind of figure out for themselves what the problem is. I would say maybe one caution about that is I've certainly been in situations where it felt like somebody was trying to coach me, and my experience was that they had an answer in mind, like they thought they knew what the solution was, and they were trying to get me to come up with it. And that doesn't feel very good. It sort of feels condescending and not always genuine. So I think just, using this technique, really be open to, genuinely asking questions and wanting to know the answers and wanting to support the individual or the team in coming up with a solution.
Kim, I think that is such a good point, because I have experienced that too, and you can feel it right away. Like, I know you're posing this as a question, but it really feels like you're telling me what to do.
Yeah.
Or you're like, you could tell they're sort of playing dumb, like, well, what about if you did this? And, or have you thought about this? And like, you can kind of feel that there's a being led, I guess. And so I think that's a really good point when we're talking about this, like, again, and that reflection, the debrief, the review of the experience to say, you know, was I trying to steer this conversation, or was I really listening and letting this person talk through it?
Yeah. So in preparation for the next session, so this is our last session. This is our last session on leadership and organizing and action specifically. I mean, hopefully you're going to continue to use these tools over the next year as you work with your coalitions on the population health specific issue that you decide to tackle. One of the things that we're going to do at the July session is to spend some time hearing from each of you about kind of where you're starting from. So when you think about this population health coalition work that you're going to be doing, what does that look like right now? And so I'm going to send you, along with the recording for this session, I'm going to send you what we're calling a population health status check or status review to just help you do some thinking in the next month about the current state of this work in your community. So we're going to ask you to kind of look at some population health data for your community if you haven't done that recently, to just kind of look at what's happening in your facility and with your partners in terms of care coordination and other population health management kind of processes or practices. I think a lot of you have already been thinking about the resources in your community related to population health, but we just want to make sure that you have a good sense of who they are or what they are, and then understanding like what's already been done in your community or what is being done. And also, if things have been tried and they haven't worked, what are those? You want to make sure that you're not either duplicating the effort that's already happening or that you're trying things that have already been done that have been shown not to work. So we're just going to send you a kind of a worksheet to help you think through some of these things. You don't have to turn it in. You don't have to do every single thing, but we are going to ask you to kind of to report out at the July session on what you know about population health status and where you're starting from with your coalition. So whether that's that you're building an entirely new group from scratch, or you're taking a coalition maybe that already exists and you're going to help them kind of add this population health component to their work plan, or whatever it might be. Any questions about that? Okay. So as usual, reach out to us at any time if you have questions. Look for an email from me on Friday, probably with the recording and the worksheet that I talked about. And then we will plan to see you again in July. So thanks, Candy, for presenting today. It was a good session. Hopefully those tools were really helpful and you get a chance to practice those. Anything else from the group?
Yeah, Kim, this is Carrie. One other thing in the session next month, so July's session, we are also gonna take a look at our aggregate data from those original population health assessments. So I know it seems like an eternity ago that we shared those. But if you have not yet completed or submitted that population health assessment, please do so at your earliest convenience. because we'll actually aggregate that data and bring some information back and hopefully be able to identify some themes for the group moving forward.
Yeah, thanks, Carrie. Okay. Well, so in the meantime, everybody have a good 4th of July. It's hard to believe it's already like almost midsummer. And check in with us if you have questions about anything. Thanks, everyone. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.